Welcome back to the Vital Mentality podcast. I'm your host, Angel Munro, and we're talking all things health, vitality, and wellness. And today we're talking about EMFs, how they affect our health, and what we can do. What are simple solutions, um, not things that you have to buy, just solutions that you can find in your daily life to remediate the effects of EMF. So I'm talking electromagnetic frequencies, and which are coming off our electrical devices. And I'll go through that more in a minute. But beforehand, I just want to say, short disclaimer, this is not intended as medical advice. This is for general purposes only. So EMFs, the electromagnetic frequencies, they're emitted from our phones, Wi-Fi routers, any wearable tech like watches, wireless headphones, including the noise cancelling ones, computers and smart meters that are on our phone. Anything basically that has to connect to a Wi-Fi also emits that frequency. So, yeah, there's lots of health effects from them. And I'm going to go through all of those, but then I'm going to start talking about what the solutions are. And there are plenty of solutions without going out and trying to find, pay for devices. So anyone who's ever held a phone in their hand knows that I feel it anyway. Your hand starts burning, gets a little bit hot. Same thing happens if you hold it up towards the ear. But you also get things like headaches, memory loss, heart palpitations, increased heart rate, ringing in the ears, especially with the headphones. That's quite a common symptom. Fatigue, skin rashes, tingling, nosebleeds, flu-like symptoms are an acute side effect from these products. And dizziness. I said burning sensations. Yeah. So not everyone will feel these. Sometimes people will feel them and not attribute them to the phone. Sometimes people don't feel these at all, but they may end up with chronic conditions afterwards. And we are so bombarded with EMFs that I suspect most people have some kind of effect. Chronic conditions, any cardiovascular disease, any metabolic disease, so things like obesity and diabetes, neurological conditions, so whether it's mood, anxiety, or things like ADHD. So I think I said in the acute illnesses that sleep might be one of the disturbances. You can end up with chronic insomnia because it interferes with melatonin production. And what else? Cancer and fertility are the other things that can affect. Now, we are electric. In Ayurveda and Chinese medicine, you would say that we had chi in Ayurveda. They called it prana. In kind of alternative Western language, we might use the words charge or ether. And even in traditional Western medicine, even though it's not really recognized that we are electric, we do use certain tests to check the electricity of certain organs, like an EEG for checking the electrical kind of function of our brain, or an ECG, or some people call it EKG, to test the electrical charge of our heart. If someone's heart stops beating, what do we do? You pull out a defibrillator and, give them an electrical shock, basically, to get the heart started again. So we are electric, and it's really interesting that with EMFs, some of the organs that are the most affected are mitochondria. So the mitochondria, which is in every kind of cell and tissue in our body that makes energy from food and sunlight and oxygen. Mitochondria are really susceptible to damage. The heart is really susceptible to damage from EMFs, and the brain is really susceptible to damage from EMFs. And I guess when you think about mitochondria, you can see if we have mitochondria everywhere, how that would affect fertility and every other function that you can think of in the body. So it's a pretty big deal. And the other thing is that we have lots of heavy metals in our environment, and really interestingly, EMFs if you have any heavy metal damage or heavy metal burden that's like causing damage in the body, EMFs will increase that. So there was a 2018 study that looked at the effects of EMFs emitted from mobile phones, and it looked at the level of nickel release from orthodontic braces. So if you've got nickel braces in your teeth, basically, and you're on your phone all the time, you're more likely to leach that nickel into your body. And they also looked at mercury from dental amalgams. And other, forgotten the word, but plates and things in the body. So if you've got anything that non-natural inside your body and you're around a lot of EMFs, you're more likely to be getting heavy metals and toxins leached from those things. And then on top of that, there was a study done in 2024 about watches, smart watches, and they looked at 22 different brands, and they found a whole lot of chemicals in them. And so on top of the fact that you've got Wi-Fi on you all the time, there was a whole lot of endocrine disrupting chemicals on those watches leaching into the body. And endocrine disruptors means that it affects your metabolism and affects your fertility and your hormonal cycle for men and women. I know that lots of people are asking, if it's so dangerous, then why are these products released into the public? Even though there's something like there's tens of thousands of studies on the effects of EMFs on the human body. There's this really good book I recommend reading it, The Invisible Rainbow by Arthur Firstenberg. Firstenberg. Even in this book, and there's more done since this book was published, there's 100 pages. This is so well referenced, like meticulously referenced, this book. 100 pages, I counted, or more, of references in this book. There's so much. So yeah, the question is again, if there are so many studies that's telling us about the harms of EMFs, then why do these devices get released into the public? So what they do to get them through, the safety studies for these products are done on a dummy named Sam, which is an anagram for specific anthropomorphic mannequin. This is basically just a dummy. It's this particular dummy Sam, he's 6 foot and he's 100 kilos. And so he doesn't really represent men, children, and represents a really small percentage of the population. And Sam, the tests that are done on Sam are to measure heat only, not radiation. And as long as Sam only gets a certain amount of heat, then those products go through, and that's it. Nothing else is considered. If you want to know more about Sam, there is a really great website called We Are Not Sam. It's an Australian website. A woman runs it, and she has a lot of information on there. So it's a great resource, free resource. That and this book I recommend people go to as a really good start. I heard another statistic the other day that 91% of us have our phones on us for 24 hours a day. And I tried to kind of verify that number, and I found another study said it was 3 in 10 people have their phones at night. I saw another one that said 75%. So anyway, I know from clients I speak to, friends and family, just at a loose number, I would say probably 90% of people I know would have their phone next to them in their room. So yeah, anyway, I think the point of me, hard to know the actual number, the point of me bringing that up is that not only are these like just massive amount of health effects, it's a really interesting like emotional attachment to have something with you all the time. What else do we have with us all the time? And yeah, anyway, it's just not a healthy relationship. It's really codependent. So on to the solutions. And the solutions, obviously, I hear lots of people, they'll say to me, well, it's everywhere anyway. You know, when you go to turn on your Wi-Fi, you go to your computer to put your Wi-Fi on your computer, you see, you know, especially in the city where I live, there's, you know, 20 other people's Wi-Fi comes up. So most people just think, well, what's the point? But there is a point. So there's a thing called the inverse square law, and it essentially means that as you double your distance away from an EMF source or radiation source, you reduce your exposure by up to 75%. So the easiest way to say this is keep things at least a meter away from where you sleep or spend a lot of time, or even during the, I'm sitting not a meter away from my laptop recording this right now, but I know that sometimes we'll have my phone while I'm working next to me. I have to really think about it to, you know, put it far away. So yeah, distancing yourself is really important. Have your Wi-Fi set up where it's at least a meter or two away from your couch, definitely out of your bedroom, because it definitely does interfere with your sleep. Phones at night, a lot of people say, I have to have my phone in my room because I use it as an alarm clock. Well, you can get an alarm clock. I use my phone as an alarm clock. I keep it out in the hallway. It's about 2 meters, I would say, away from the bed. I have no problem hearing it. I've always done that. I've never put it in my room. I've never had a problem getting up. But if you do have a problem getting up, if it's a couple of meters away from you, then yeah, get an alarm clock. It should not be in your room at night. When you think about all of the health problems I mentioned before, especially the fact that it affects your mitochondria, which is involved in everything, then yeah, we should try and be away from it as much as possible. And that's such a massive reduction, 75% damage. The damage is reduced by 75% just by being a couple of meters away from you. That being said, that gets me onto wearables. Obviously, I don't think people should use them at all. I don't think there's any need for them at all. When you think about things like, I know people have rings or watches, and they'll do things, say, to track their sleep. Why would you have something on you that actually interferes with your sleep? You don't need to track it. You just need to make sure that you're taking the things that interfere with it as far away from you as possible. Yeah, so when you think that, when I mentioned before, you know, things like cardiovascular health, neurological health, they're two, and metabolic and fertility, they're like the hugest problems that we have at the moment en masse. That EMFs are a massive contributor to these things. Then yeah, I really don't think anyone should be wearing watches or walking around with the wireless headphones in their ears. And this includes noise cancelling headphones. I know a lot of people, this is bit spicy for me to say, but I know a lot of people are recommended these for people in the, especially children in the autism and ADHD kind of spectrum. And I really think it's a bad idea when Wi-Fi interferes with neurological function. So an alternative would be to have them wired in. And the other thing is to, I guess this is a bit of a divergent, but even though that there would be some relief from having it on, I'd be looking at ways to fix why you need noise cancelling in the first place. Like, what other things can you do in your lifestyle without having to have those on all the time? But yeah, definitely switch to wired. You can get noise cancelling headphones that wire into your devices. That's the other thing. Wi-Fi. I personally turn our Wi-Fi off at night. We have a few people in the house, so it suits us to have Wi-Fi. If it was just me, I would be switching to wiring in our modem straight into a laptop. But I understand, and I fall into that category when there's a few people in the house. It's just not practical. So turning it off when you're not using it, if possible, and definitely turning it off at night. I've said this to people with teenagers, and they've said it's hard because teenagers sometimes stay up later. I also fall into that category, and I'm now successfully got my daughter. It took a while, but she does actually turn, even if she's up later than us, she will turn it off, which is great. So yeah, just sometimes takes a bit of time to get everyone on board, but it can happen. If you do have your phone in the hallway, back to having your phone in the hallway for an alarm clock, if you can, if you're not worried about getting any phone calls from loved ones, then I would also turn it on to airplane mode as an extra thing. Back to, people having them, that 91%, which I'm not sure is totally true, about people having it with them 24 hours a day, but I would say lots of people do. Find time to have boundaries with it. And like I said before, this is also from just like an emotional and energetic point of view of setting like a relationship boundary, because we do relate to these devices, especially to our phones. So setting up a boundary for that reason, as well as the health reasons. So I personally, if I go for a run or a walk, I don't take my phone with me. I don't have it at the dinner table. If I'm watching a movie, I make sure it's in another room. If I'm with a client, I turn it off, so just finding ways that you can detach from it for a certain amount of time every day, whatever that boundary is that you set up. The more that you do that, the more time you have far away from that device is so much better for you for so many reasons. Also, smart meters, most people have them in front of their house. Ours is actually in front of our bedroom. It's a fairly compact house, and there's not many options in terms of where to put the bed and everything. But I would say it's probably a meter away, which would be the minimum. And on the other side of the wall, obviously. But yeah, trying to keep where you spend time as far away from that meter as possible is a really good idea. I'm just checking that I think I've covered everything. Basically, keep those devices away from you as possible, and things that you have like watches and wireless earphones, definitely consider an alternative. We do not need to be I know people like to count their steps and things. We don't really need to count our steps. Exercise every day, get outside every day. We don't need a watch to tell us whether we're doing that or not. I don't think anyway. Controversial take, maybe. In terms of diet, it's really interesting. The things like oysters, sardines, mackerel, anchovy, salmon, like wild salmon, they're all known to have low levels of mercury. And like I said, it's good to avoid heavy metals as much as possible because you don't want that toxic burden. So we've seen that there's studies that show us that heavy metals and EMFs work together and cause extra damage. So sticking to seafood that has low levels of mercury, but interestingly, those also have higher omega-3 fatty acids, and fats, good fats, seem to be protective against EMF. So making, things like olive oil, butter, fats from eggs, oily fish, that kind of thing. That's actually protective to cheeses, protective against EMFs. It makes sense because we're 99% water by, I think, molecular weight. And inside, when you cut yourself open, water doesn't gush out. It's because it's a gel-like water that's made into this gel form because of the charge, this electrical charge that we have. And those kind of fats there, those fats maintain that charge. Reducing toxins, I always say this, through foods, by having organic. If you really can't have organic, at least try and stick away from the dirty dozen. You can also wash your food in bicarb soda, and that takes some of the pesticides off. They also react with EMFs, but it doesn't take all of them off. But it is a good in between if you really can't afford organic. Drinking filtered water as much as possible because heavy metals in the water. And limiting any highly processed foods. Again, there's less water, less charge. So basically, if we think about it, if we're electric, there's non-native electricity, which is any man-made electricity and anything coming from our electrical equipment, phones, etc. And native electricity we get from the sun, from real food, from water, minerals, from grounding, saunas, animals, exercise, clean water. I think I said that already. Sunlight. So just engaging with nature is the best way to say it, as much as possible. I also said, that's nature is the antidote to that, just to put a highlight. Remineralizing as well, because minerals, essential minerals, they actually chelate, so get rid of heavy metals. I really like fulvic acid. I sell it at the shop, as well as water filters. But yeah, just high mineral foods, which is basically just a whole food diet, is the bare minimum for sure. So I think I have covered everything today. Again, thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time.